In the 90s, games were transitioning from high-score repetitive gameplay to the modern single-player campaign that we're used to today. This usually involved reinventing an arcade game into something new, like Q*bert and Frogger for the PlayStation 1, or Pac-Man 2 for the Super Nintendo. But the game that did this the best, to the point of being ahead of its time, is Donkey Kong for the Game Boy. The Donkey Kong arcade game is one of the most famous games in the world. Since this game was everywhere by 1994, people were familiar with Donkey Kong when the Game Boy version was released. When you boot up the game, it begins just as you would expect it. You play the original levels found in the arcade game, but then all expectations are shattered, and the new mechanics are introduced, starting with a key and a door. The real game starts here. Instead of being a high-scoring arcade game, this reboot is instead a puzzle platformer, the goal of most stages being to get the key to the door as you chase Donkey Kong through each world. Now, this wasn't a surprise to me as a kid. I read the box and the manual before starting the game, but I can only imagine what someone's reaction would be if you just handed them the Game Boy game, told them it was Donkey Kong, and turned them loose. The closest I think I've gotten is watching streamers play Game Boy games on stream, and then taking my suggestion to play Donkey Kong. Here's the reaction of one of my favorite streamers, T1shero.
So, I love how those things are supposed to be fireballs. They look like peeps to me. Those look just like peeps. Alright, world record. Wait, what? Wait, what? Really? Now this is interesting.
So from this point, the game starts to teach the player some new mechanics. First, Mario needs a key to open the door. So the first stage of the big city is a straightforward platforming challenge to get the key to the door. In the second stage, the game starts teaching us about the enemies. In the arcade game, any contact with an enemy is bad. But here, some enemies double as platforms. So how does the game teach the player this? Let's have Mario start the second stage on top of an enemy, so that they know that they can jump on and ride them. Something as simple as where you start the player character can teach them about the stage. I found this example in Super Mario Bros. 3 while playing it with Raji on the Super10Bros channel.
This is Kaizo fun for everyone.
See, this right here, this is a tutorial on the screen wrapping, where they just stick you in that spot and say, look, you have to know that this level screen wraps or you will not win.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did actually.
Alright, back to Donkey Kong. Not all of the stages are key and door stages. There are still Donkey Kong stages where we need to either get to Donkey Kong or hit him 3 times in order to progress. In this first one, just note how the stage is very wide, but Donkey Kong is always in the frame so that the player can anticipate when he's going to jump. After we beat Donkey Kong, we get another cutscene with another new mechanic. There are panels that will allow Mario to create custom platforms and ladders in order to progress. So, like before, the first stage after custom bridges are introduced, the player is given a straightforward build the bridge to get the key to the door stage. But the next 3 stages are also teaching the player how the fall damage has changed from the arcade game. You were given very little distance to fall before a life was taken from you in the arcade game. But in this game, you need to fall quite a bit to lose a life. This is indicated by how much Mario rotates during the fall. If he falls on his head, then you will need to begin again. After the next Kong fight, we learn about switches that will be added to the stages. Again, the game reinforces that we can ride on some enemies by starting us on the Ladybug. After learning more about switches and how they are used, you reach another Kong fight. After this Kong fight, you learn your first new platforming technique, a handstand that can be used to deflect projectiles from above. This is super important because, like the keys and the switches, you will need to master this in order to progress through the game. After the next Kong fight, you learn the backflip. The stages that follow will reinforce the backflip. After the next Kong fight, you learn the tightrope swing. The stages that follow will reinforce the tightrope swing. The pacing of this game is centered around drip feeding the player new mechanics to learn, then reinforcing and building upon them. The stages are short. The cycle of learning a mechanic, using the mechanic, and mastering that mechanic is quick. So the feeling of progression is very high as you quickly move through the map that you're on. The game is a big chase between Mario and Donkey Kong. There are questions like, where is the next location Mario will chase Donkey Kong? What is the next scheme that Donkey Kong will use to stop Mario? And what new technique or mechanic will Mario use to continue the chase? All of these are bundled together into little vignette cutscenes. They remind me of the old slapstick cartoons like Tom and Jerry and Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. Donkey Kong comes up with another idea on how to stop Mario, but Mario pulls out a new trick to overcome that obstacle and continue the chase. So the cutscenes and the new locations are the reward for the gameplay. But not only are they the reward, they are also the tutorial. Help me in the comments, what are some other games that you can think of where the intrinsic reward for playing is the tutorial? I'm sure that there are others, but I can't think of any right now. But the new techniques not only change the way you play future stages, they will also change the previous stages if you go back and play them. The genius of the level design is that it not only tests the player on what they know so far, it also allows the player to access shortcuts in the previous stages if they are on a second playthrough of the game. The very first 4 stages would usually require the ladders, but if you know how to do the handstand or the backflip, then you can easily get to the top in seconds. In the first stage of the big city, you can now avoid all of the enemies. If you know how to do the tightrope swing, then you can skip the first part of stage 2 and stage 3. But during the first Kong fight, instead of avoiding the falling objects, you can now deflect them. But again, the point is that the stages are designed to be engaging to both returning players and new players in different ways. Keep in mind that the game actively tries to remind players of these advanced techniques in the attract mode. This is set up like a stage show, where Mario appears on the stage and then performs a backflip, a handstand, a triple jump, and the tightrope swing. It also reminds the player about the change in fall damage, and at the end, Mario will bow to the audience before disappearing back under the stage. Donkey Kong is a puzzle game, and you need lots of chances to slowly figure out the puzzles through trial and error. There are 2 ways that you can gain lives in this game. You can collect the parasol, hat, and handbag from each stage to play a bonus round, or complete the stages quickly. After each Kong fight, the time remaining on the clock from each previous stage is totaled up, and the extra lives are given based on the total remaining time. 1 extra life for each 100 seconds, and 1 more for the remainder. On your first playthrough, as you are learning all of the mechanics, you can take it slower and collect the items. If you're playing through the game again, then you can opt for going quickly to save time and gain more lives that way. The stages are also built so that you can experiment with some techniques that you have been taught. In the Kong fight in stage 3-8, you can carry the barrels up from the bottom of the stage, or you can use the handstand to stop the barrels halfway down, so that you don't need to carry them up as far. The choice is slow and steady, or risky but more rewarding. And the game doesn't stop there with the new mechanics or the inspiration from the older Donkey Kong games. There are stages that use the vine mechanic from Donkey Kong Jr. They build on this with monkeys that you ride on their tails just like vines. But if you hold them in place, then they get upset and squeak at you. Then Donkey Kong Jr. shows up to help his dad, by making some extra trouble for Mario. Poison mushrooms are introduced that will shrink Mario, making him unable to carry the key. And I haven't even started to describe the back half of the game yet. I do want to touch on the ending of the game, the last 4 stages. These stages are here to show you how far you've come. 9.5 is an expanded version of the first stage, but with all of the extra techniques that you can now quickly reach the top without using the ladders at all. 9.7 is a similar stage, but the ladders are not included, instead being swapped out for a collapsing floor. And I won't spoil the final Kong fight, but it's one of the best boss fights on the Game Boy. It's fun, interesting, and engaging. Donkey Kong is my pick for the best game on the Game Boy. There are other great games like Pokemon Blue and Red, Kirby's Dream Land, and the Super Mario Land games. But it's the way that this game engages the player on the first playthrough and all subsequent playthroughs. It makes it kind of like Tetris in a way. The better you get at the game, the more ways you can experiment with how you play the game in the future. So it's engaging every time and comes highly recommended.